Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's session is about nutrition for healthy aging. Our guest speaker is Roohe Ahmed. She's a seasoned registered dietitian and health educator with over 15 years of experience in the industry. Her expertise spans nutrition counseling, health education, and public speaking. In addition to her professional practice, she serves as an adjunct professor at Mount SAC. And with extensive experience in program management, curriculum development, and class facilitation, Roohe is proficient in public speaking and conducting media interviews on nutrition and wellness topics. Her patient-centric coaching skills include motivational interviewing and intensive lifestyle programs. She has a successful track record in developing and leading educational sessions and cooking classes at Kaiser Permanente. She is also managed and supervised WIC programs and community outreach initiatives at the Orange County Healthcare Agency. Her extensive experience and passion for wellness make her a valuable asset, bringing a wealth of knowledge and nutrition, health education, and program management. I would also like to share that she happens to be on the board of directors at Olive Community Services and leads the programs at Middle Ground in Upland on a monthly basis. So if you haven't gone to those programs or know anybody in the Inland Empire, please encourage them to join them. Welcome, Roohe. Please take it away.
Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much. Are you guys able to hear me okay? Just thumbs up. Okay. Thanks so much, Zainab, for having me. I think that bio was kind of old, but anyways, I'm happy to be here with all of you, and hopefully I can see some of you on our once a month Olive at Middle Ground gatherings. So I'm happy to be here to talk about a passion of mine, also my career, which is nutrition. And happy to be here during the Wellness Challenge. And I know there's a lot going on. You guys are keeping track of so many different things. So today we're going to be focusing mostly on nutrition practices. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll hold questions till the end. I know things might pop up. If you're like, oh, I really want to ask this, just jot it down for yourself. Maybe I will have answered it during the presentation. If not, then I'll get to it definitely at the end. And feel free to also put things in the chat box. I'll try to moderate that and include that if possible. And I usually, here, my mom will participate in the Neelam, the 10 a.m. Exercise session. And I've always kind of heard her in the background, but never really paid attention. Then today I got a chance to sit in and listen. And that was an amazing session. Because it's not only just exercise, it's meditation, it's relaxation, and it's mindset. And I wanted to actually start off as well talking about the importance of mindset. So our topics for today, I know this is a multi-faith audience, so I'm not going to delve into the deep, depths of Islam and health, but I'll just kind of mention it really quickly. But the greater topic that I'm going to be focusing on that aspect is just about our mindset. So our why. So we'll get to that in just a moment. We'll talk about common nutrition concerns and some practical strategies. So things that we can walk away with today that we're going to be able to implement like right away. So if you want to grab some pen and paper, take some notes. Don't worry, there's no test. But just hopefully the things, pop up and you're like, oh, I really want to do that. I want to, add this to my habits. Then you'll be able to refer back to that. So first things first, so as I was mentioning, and I really, again, really enjoyed Neelam's session and at the end where she was having us kind of think about even like grudges and things we might have against people, and just like letting things go. And I'm not going to be, focusing on that aspect of stress and stress management, but that is a big aspect of wellness. So I just want to put that out there. And I know there are sessions that Olive does regarding stress management. So those are definitely very important to think about. But in terms of our wellness, in terms of our health, in terms of making changes, first things first is what is our mindset? If we have a negative mindset, I'm never going to be able to change. This is just how I eat. This is just what I do. I don't exercise. I can't do that. Then guess what's going to happen? We're not going to be able to do those things. So we have to kind of make a shift in our mind. And what's amazing is there is a field called neuroplasticity, which tells us that our brain can change. We can change our thoughts. We can change our behaviors. So it's never too late. But it first starts off with what is our why? What is our motivation? So I want to actually ask all of you that, and you can jot it down for yourself. If you want to share in the chat box, you're welcome to do so. But why do you want to be healthy? Because I hear this a lot from my patients and just, if I'm out in the community, oh yeah, I want to make changes because I want to be healthy. Okay, that's great. But what do you want to do when you are healthy? Do you have any plans? Do you have any things you want to achieve, accomplish? Does anyone want to share anything in the chat box? And if you're feeling shy about it, that's okay. As long as you're just kind of even, like I said, taking these notes for yourself. What is my motivation? Why do I want to make these changes? Why do I want to be healthy? Anyone want to share? Okay. So, someone mentioned, I don't want to depend on anyone. Yeah, I want to be able to do and be independent as long as I can, right? Get my groceries, put things away so I can help myself and not depend on anyone. Everything is easier in life when you're healthy. I want to have healthy habits that are long term. So this is amazing. I'm kind of seeing this theme of just us being independent, right? Being able to do things for ourselves. And it starts from now, right? It actually starts from years ago, but it's never too late. So that is definitely a big reason. And then even getting more personal, getting more kind of digging deep into it. Three top reasons that health is important to you. So um, someone mentioned complete Hajj and make the most of it, be an active and present parent, be independent for as long as possible. So I keep seeing this theme of independence, independence, right? So that's going to be number one. But other things, maybe fun things you want to do. And inshallah, everyone that wants to achieve, complete Hajj, inshallah, this year, they're able to do that or soon. So things to think about, because one of the things I tend to see is motivation runs low. We get very excited, right? Oh, it's January, it's a new year, new me. I'm going to make these changes, right? We have our wellness challenge from Olive. I'm going to make these changes. And then what happens to us? The steam starts to go down. We kind of lose that motivation, right? And they're like, oh, no, wait, what happened? And okay, let me go back to my old habits. And then something else happens. So motivation can be a roller coaster. So to kind of help keep us on track as much as possible, pick the top three reasons, write them down, and put them somewhere that you can look at them regularly, right? Some people want to travel, they want to see the world, help those in need. These are amazing. So write those down. And when you have those days, like, oh, forget it. I think I'm going to skip my walk today. I think I'm just going to, have three donuts. I don't care. You can remind yourself that maybe this is not helping me to achieve my goals. And that is one question I am going to be asking you at the end is that what is your goals? So we're going to be talking about a lot of things. I want you to pick some practical things that you are going to implement ASAP. Okay, so let's get going. So luckily, I know again, and this is a multi-faith audience, but I know many of us are Muslim. And what's amazing about Islam is we have health built into our religion. So in the Quran, our holy book, there are various ayahs that actually give us that motivation, right? Eat and drink, but avoid excess. So we even have instructions from God, eat, drink, right? But don't go overboard, basically. People, eat what is good and lawful from the earth, right? So eating good, nutritious foods. You who believe, eat the good things we have provided for you and be grateful to God if it is Him that you worship. So not only are we told to eat good things, but to remember that God provided these. So that attitude of gratitude, that's also a very powerful attitude to bring in. There are even sayings by our holy prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that verily your body has a right over you. This is very powerful that we will be asked that how did we treat our body and what do we use our health for? Right? Are we helping people? Are we, again, taking care of, our family, our community, our friends, ourselves? Ask Allah, God, for forgiveness and health, for after being granted certainty, one is given nothing better than health. How many of us realize and remember the blessings of health when we're not feeling well, right? When we're not able to do things like, oh, it's so, I can't, maybe you're injured your knee or something. You're not able to get up and do something. You can't even go into, sujood when you're praying and we miss that, but we took it for granted, right? And this next thing is one that we hear very often, right? That, half of what 1/3 of our stomach should be food, 1/3 should be drink, and 1/3 should be air, right? But we forget there's actually a portion that comes before it. So no human being has ever filled a container worse than his own stomach. So what does that mean? That like again, if we eat too much gluttony, right? What happens to us when we go overboard, right? The son of Adam needs no more than a few morsels of food to keep up his strength. So this is also kind of indicating that we don't need that much food, but we need to also make sure we're getting nutritious food so that we have that strength. So let's kind of break it down. So I know I'm a dietitian, I'm focused on nutrition, but health isn't just what we're eating. It's a big part of it for sure, right? We all heard that saying, you are what you eat. But it's beyond that. So it's nutrition. So what are we putting into our body? Because quite literally, you are what you eat, right? Everything that we're eating is going to break down and become a part of our bodies. Physical activity, this is very, very important. So I'm so happy that every Monday there is a class that we do here that's like chair exercises and also that meditation, relaxation. So these two next aspects, physical activity and stress management, are very, very important. I know many of you are in the wellness challenge and you're keeping track of your steps. That is amazing. That's great. And I think we hear a lot of times that, oh, we need 10,000 steps, right? How many of you have heard that? Yeah, you need 10,000 steps. And that's a lot. I'm not gonna lie, that's a lot. And that those step count was actually arbitrarily kind of set by fitness tracker companies. What we've seen in the research is just even getting 5,000 steps can help to decrease mortality, right? So it can give us hopefully inshallah a longer life. So just maybe even aim for 5,000 steps. If you feel like, really, this is really hard, even 5,000 steps feels so hard. Just see how many steps you currently take. Can you take some extra steps? Like, can I park far if I'm able to? Right? I know sometimes it's hard. Can I make an extra round, at the grocery store, just to get those steps in? And then getting proper exercise if you're able to, depending on whatever your physical limitations are. I know many people have different physical limitations. So whatever you're able to do, because we can still do something. So if your lower body is hurting, aim on your aim for your upper body. So hopefully we get some sort of activity in for our daily, because that's what we as human beings are meant to do, right? We've become very sedentary. If you look and at your screen time, it can be scary how many hours are spent looking at the screen. So physical activity and stress management, very, very important. Stress management also includes self-care. So taking care of ourselves. And that also includes having social connection. And that's why, again, a little shout out for Olive. It's so amazing that there's so many outlets to connect with people in person. And we have virtual too. Makes it convenient, but we also need that in-person social connection as well. That's very important for mental health and well-being. And of course, sleep. So are we getting enough sleep? Are we getting restful sleep? That's really the foundation of wellness. If we're not sleeping proper, it just throws off the whole day, right? We don't have energy, then I don't feel like really cooking anything or making anything. Let me just grab what's in the fridge. Oh, I'm too tired. I'm not gonna go for my walk. So sleep is a really big part of wellness as well. I really feel like it's very, very foundational. So trying to get, whatever amount of sleep that we can. Ideally, that 7 to 9 hours is a recommendation. So just a kind reminder, my friends, that you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You have to take care of yourself first, right? For those, if you've been on an airplane, right? And that's one of the things that they say, if the oxygen mask comes down, the first person that we should put that mask on, even if you have a child next to you, even if you have a dependent next to you, we have to put the mask on ourselves first so that we can take care of the person next to us. So same thing with life, right? We want to also make sure that we are taking care of ourselves first. So I know there's a different variety of age groups here, but since Olive is more senior focused, I did want to just really quickly outline some of the common nutrition related conditions that we do tend to see in older adults. So things like age-related macular degeneration. So that affects our eyes, our eyesight. Atrophic gastritis. So that can be inflammation, right, of our GI tract. Bacterial overgrowth, right? We might be on different medications. that could affect the different microbes that we have in our gut. Or just even with aging, we see a difference in the type of microbes that grow. And I can do a whole separate session on gut health. That's a whole intense area. Dementia is another thing. And again, I really liked how Neelam had talked about, different exercises for brain health as well. Diverticulosis, this is where we see little pockets in the intestine tract that things can kind of get stuck in. That can cause some inflammation. Impaired immune function. So as we get older, our immunity does decrease and it kind of shifts a little bit so that we can't kind of, fight off some of the common, viruses that maybe we were able to fight off a little bit better when we were older. So that is a really big thing is our immunity. So I'll talk a little bit more about some things that we can consume to help us, kind of bolster our immune system. Osteoporosis, right? The softening of our bones, that's a big one, especially for women. And then another big one is sarcopenia. This is where we lose muscle mass, right? And this tends to happen very, I don't want to say dramatically, but it really starts to pick up, especially after age 60. So we really want to make sure that we are eating proper protein. I'll talk about that. And also making sure that we're doing some sort of weight-bearing exercises that can actually help us to maintain some of that muscle mass. So speaking of just having realistic expectations, I know sometimes when we, join these challenges, or just maybe different goals we might have throughout the year, there is unfortunately a big society focus on weight. It's unfortunate, but I try to tell people like, let's not focus just on weight. Let's look at other things. So how are you feeling, right? How's your blood pressure? How's your blood glucose levels, right? How, do you have energy, right? Those are big things to kind of think about. How do you physically and mentally feel? Right? So lab values are also important to take a look at, kind of track those, as you're making different changes. And then measurements actually are really powerful too, right? Taking our waist circumference. So this is really key. This is like kind of, you can kind of see it in the diagram there with the folks there. It's where we're measuring kind of the leanest part of our bodies around our waist. So ideally for men, we want to see waist circumference less than 40 inches. For women, less than 35 inches. This is just an average, okay? And it doesn't mean, I don't want us to get, upset about it or anything, but it's just kind of indicating to us whether we are at increased risk of disease. A better ratio to kind of take a look at is waist to hip ratio. So you measure your waist. So again, the kind of the leanest part of your body, and then the widest part of your body is your hips. So you would divide your waist inches by your height inches. And ideally speaking, for women, we want less than 0.7, and for men, less than 0.9, give or take. All right, so hopefully these are a little bit more better measures than just weight, because weight is not telling us the whole story, right? Let's suppose I ate something very salty the night before. I'm probably going to see some more pounds on that scale, and it doesn't mean it's like fat per se. It just means it's that water weight. So it's hard for us to look at the quality of our weight, because when we're trying to manage our weight, ideally we're trying to lose fat, not necessarily muscle or water. Now, also some nutrients of concern for seniors is protein. And there's a very, very huge, big push for protein in general, but I want us just to be careful of that. All right. If anyone has any kidney issues, you really need to talk to your health practitioner about how much protein you should be consuming, because usually with kidney issues, we do not want to go overboard with protein. I actually had a patient the other day that was young and he was doing a lot of weight training, and his trainer told him to eat lots of, like, it was a crazy amount of protein, and he ended up getting kidney stones. So it was an a big amount of protein. So just something to kind of think about is that we want to always have a balance. There isn't any one nutrient we should be going overboard with, I guess you can say. So a balance in all this, but protein is important. I will be talking more about that coming up. Fluids, making sure we're hydrated. As we get older, we kind of lose our thirst sensation. So sometimes we forget, am I thirsty? What's going on? So, maybe having some, you can get some of the water bottles around and just fill it up and say, okay, this is my goal for today. I'm going to try to fill this up twice, right? So ideally, we do want to see about 48 to 64 ounces, give or take. Some of you might be on fluid restrictions on your, depending on different medications you have. So again, check in with your health practitioner about that. But generally speaking, we do want to make sure we're getting in fluids. And fluids, of course, water is going to be number one, right? I know many of us like our tea. The caffeinated beverages are not going to count per se in the fluid count. So it's more like non-caffeinated, non-carbonated beverages. So maybe you're having like herbal tea, right? It doesn't have caffeine. Maybe you're drinking some soup, right? We get some fluid in from our fruits and vegetables as well. So that also kind of counts all in the total fluid intake, but just generally speaking, that 6 to 8 glasses, we're usually referring to water. Calcium is, of course, very important, but just to note, everyone, that be careful with the supplements. Sometimes people overload, they have too much calcium supplements. We need to be careful with that. We want to make sure we have a balance between our food sources of calcium and our supplement. Always, it's best to get nutrients through foods. Now, supplements are like a backup. So maybe you're deficient in something. Maybe you're deficient in vitamin D. Many of us are low in vitamin D. Maybe we're deficient in vitamin B12. And B12 is another vitamin that we do see as we get older that many people do get deficient in because vitamin B12 depends on stomach acid, something called intrinsic factor, to kind of extract the B12 from foods. But when we get older, we have less of that. So many people, unfortunately, are deficient in B12. Get tested for that, however, because on the flip side, I do have many patients that are high in B12 because they're going overboard with supplements. We always want to get the balance. But going back to supplements, talk to your practitioner. Make sure, you're only taking supplements because there's some sort of deficiency or if there's any sort of general recommendation for any reason. And also be careful with a lot of the herbal supplements. I know many people are like, oh, well, it's natural. It's healthy because it's coming from the earth. Arsenic is natural and arsenic is a poison. So we have to also keep in mind that just because it's quote unquote natural doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. And sometimes there can be drug interactions with some of these different herbs and supplements. So, for instance, hibiscus tea can actually help lower blood pressure. But if you're drinking lots of hibiscus tea and you're already on, blood pressure medications, maybe that's not a good idea, right? Fish oil, omega-3s are helpful to reduce inflammation in our body. But if you're on a blood thinner, usually we don't recommend them. So it's again very important to make sure that you double check what supplements you're taking, what medications you're on, making sure there's no interactions. Because again, nowadays we see such a push. Take the supplements, drink this, take that. And we just want to kind of be cautious of that. B6 is another vitamin of concern that we see. Zinc as well. We don't want to over supplement on zinc because that might cause a copper deficiency. So we want to be careful with that amount as well. And then also iron. Many people are deficient in iron, but don't diagnose yourself. Okay, I think I'm really tired and I think I need iron. No, double check, make sure you are truly deficient in that before you take any sort of iron supplement. So just in general, so all of these foods we want to ideally, or sorry, excuse me, all of these nutrients, we want to do our best to get through foods. So what kind of foods should we be eating? So we want to enjoy healthier foods. And there's a saying by this author that if it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. So what does that mean? Basically, we want to watch out for ultra processed foods. And this is becoming a really big issue. So foods are processed, right? If I'm taking, let's suppose I am using canned beans to make something, right? Basically, they just took beans, right? And they just canned them. It's technically processed, but that's not the problem. The problem is foods are so processed, so ultra processed that we don't even know where, like what the raw material is. How did it start? Right? Whenever I counsel kids, I'll ask them, I'm like, okay, how do you make a Cheeto or how do you make those Takis? Like, how would I make that at home? And they're like, we don't know, So that's the thing. Like sometimes food is so changed that we cannot literally, figure out what its raw material was. So if it's a food that you can't make at home because you need special ingredients, you need chemicals, you need equipment, that would be considered ultra processed foods. So again, very things like again, a lot of the snack foods we want to be careful of. Some of these like, ultra processed frozen dinners and things like that. We want to be careful. So honestly, the less ingredients, the better. Read the ingredients, see, what does it make sense to me? Do I understand what this is? There are different apps that you can scan products in the marketplace and they can kind of rate them for you. That might be an idea to think about. But just again, using common sense. Like, do I know what this is? Do I want to eat this? And listen to your gut. It would be nice to eat like our grandparents ate, right? Let's all think about how our grandparents eat. I don't think they ate that much, right? They weren't snacking that much. They were getting a lot of activity in. So, lifestyles like our grandparents, right? And also, it is helpful if you are feeling different symptoms. Let's suppose you're like, oh, I feel tired all the time. I feel bloated. I'm having heartburn. I'm having this and that. It is helpful to check and see what you're eating, right? So keep a food diary. Just write down what time you're eating, write down what you ate, how much you ate. But also, what I suggest is writing down how you're feeling. Like, what were your stress levels like that day? How much sleep did you get that night? Because a lot of times, what happens is that when we're stressed out, our body thinks that we are in a state of danger, right? Something bad is going on. We have to run out of there. We have to save ourselves. So our body, it really shifts its focus to life preservation. So it's not digesting as well as it could if we were in a relaxed state. If we're in a relaxed state, our body's like, okay, good, we're relaxed. So it'll digest more properly. But when we're in a stress state, our body's trying to, save ourselves. So digestion is affected. And so that's why I was really kind of harping on earlier about stress, because there is a direct relationship between our brain and our gut. So a lot of times how we're feeling can play out with symptoms in our gut, right? I see a lot of patients that have irritable bowel syndrome, right? Functional dyspepsia, things like that, where there's not necessarily something quote unquote wrong in the structure of the GI tract, but they're just feeling all these different symptoms. And again, a lot of times it could be due to just the way that stress and inflammation is playing out in the body. So when we are tracking our foods and our stress and our sleep, it really does open a window. That, wow, I was really stressed that day. And no wonder I was eating that and then I had heartburn. Maybe it was due to the stress. Or it could also be different foods, right? Maybe as what happens as we get older, unfortunately, is we do kind of have an intolerance for dairy, for lactose. So that's kind of common to see. So maybe you need to pick like, lactose-free products or smaller amounts. Many people can be sensitive to wheat. And it's not necessarily the wheat itself. There's a lot of pesticides, unfortunately, that are sprayed on our produce and our grains. And it might be the pesticides themselves that are causing an issue. So again, unfortunately, we can't really, control that per se. The way we can control that is trying to get organic if possible on certain things. But it is helpful for us to kind of see, okay, whenever I eat this, I do notice I feel this way. So maybe you eat less, maybe you change to a healthier option. So just something to kind of think about. Now, another thing, I'm not going to suggest it this year, but sometimes I do suggest doing a sugar challenge where you reduce or remove all added sugars from your diet for 2 weeks. It's not easy, so that's why I'm not going to suggest it this year. But what I do suggest is looking at how much added sugars are being are you consuming. So added sugars are sugars that is added to a product that wasn't there in the first place. So yogurt, right? Plain yogurt, there is a little bit of natural sugars there. We're not concerned about that. We're concerned if they're adding in all that strawberries or the banana flavor, all that, right? Does that mean I can't eat yogurt that has some flavor? You can, but why don't you do it yourself? Why don't you get plain yogurt and you add a little bit of honey or you add your fruit to it? Then you can control how much sugar is going in there. And I'll show you a little tip that when you go and you read labels, you can take a look and see how many teaspoons of sugar there are adding to products. So the American Heart Association recommends that for added sugars, again, sugars that were added to products that was not there in the first place. So for women, we want to aim for less than 25 grams per day. So that's like 6.5 teaspoons or less. So let's suppose you drink tea 3 times a day, let's just say, or maybe 2 times a day. So you have your morning tea, maybe you put 2 teaspoons of sugar in your tea in the morning, 2 teaspoons of sugar in your tea in the afternoon, and then you're having your little biscuit, right? Maybe we're having a little, cake or whatever. That's added sugar too. So it's very easy, unfortunately, to reach those amounts pretty quick. right? For men, we're aiming for less than 37.5 grams per day, which is about 9.5 teaspoons. So that's something just to think about because sugar doesn't have any real value other than it just tastes good. I'm not getting any nutrients from it. It's just pleasure, basically. So when we're taking a look at the label, you'll see on the label it says total sugar. So total sugars means all the sugars that's in there, the natural sugars and the added. Again, we're not concerned about natural sugars. We're more concerned about the added sugars. So you'll see the number they'll say includes, in this case, it's 0 grams, but usually there might be some amount there. So let me show you a little example. Oh, sorry. So before I get to my example, just really quickly, there's a lot of different terms for sugar out there. This is just a few. This is just a sampling of the different forms of sugar that we see. And the question that I get all the time, what's a good sugar? And my answer is none. Sorry, I'm just being honest. The thing is, there's no benefits to sugar, as I mentioned. So the best sugar is the one that you use the least amount of. So if you're like, you know what, I really like honey and I just put a little drizzle of honey and I'm good, do that, right? So whatever you use the least amount of. And ideally speaking, things that aren't too overly processed. So hopefully no one's using high fructose corn syrup, but the ones that usually are a little bit better. But again, I'm saying better, but I'm saying it very cautiously because I don't want us to go and say, oh, well, she said it's better. So I'm just going to be only using lots of that. Just still be careful of how much you're using. Honey tends to be a little bit better because there are some antioxidants. And then for us Muslims, it is a sunnah food. Um, Maple syrup, there's coconut sugar, there's like date sugar. Actually, even better would be just to take dates, chop them up, and just put them into your foods. And a little sneak peek, I think another date farm trip, I think is in the works, I believe. So again, that's nature's candy for us. If you are going to be using monk fruit, just double check and make sure there's no sugar alcohol in there, erythritol, because there might be some potential harms of that. If you have diabetes and you're using artificial sweetener, the better one to use would be just pure stevia, just pure, nothing else, nothing cut into it. Sucralose, which is Splenda, is not recommended. Splenda could potentially actually increase insulin levels. It can actually work in a roundabout way. So we don't usually recommend that, to be honest. And it can unfortunately affect our gut microbiome. So yeah, so these are again the different types of sugar. Just use whatever you use the least amount of. Like, do you need to have sugar in your tea? If you don't, then skip it. So here's an example going back to what I was mentioning about reading labels. So if you take a look at the label, as I mentioned, it'll say total sugars. That's all the sugars that's in there. We are more concerned about added sugars. You take a look at where it says added sugars. So in this case, this is a real life example of a yogurt I used to eat. But it says 11 grams of added sugar. So you take the number, the grams of added sugars, and you divide it by 4. And that's going to tell you how many teaspoons you are eating. So in this case, it says 11 grams of added sugar. You divide it by 4, that's almost 3 teaspoons of sugar. And it's not a big container, it's like a smaller container. That's a lot of sugar. Because if you think about it, let's suppose you had a little bit of yogurt that's plain, would we be putting 3 whole teaspoons of sugar in there? I don't think so. So there is usually a lot of sugar, added to different foods. You'd be surprised. So just kind of take a look at that. And again, for women, try to aim for less than 6.5 teaspoons a day. For men, less than 9.5 teaspoons. And I know some women are saying, why do men get more? Well, remember, men's body composition is different. They have more muscle mass than women, so they're able to metabolize calories and burn calories a lot faster than we are. So that's the reason. And another common micronutrient that we want to be careful of is sodium. Now, sodium is needed. So we do need sodium in our body, right? So this is a nutrient of concern, but the concern is that we get too much. And it's found mostly in high amounts in processed foods and restaurant foods. So just kind of be careful with that, especially if you have high blood pressure, you want to be careful. But I'm going to be honest, the stats indicate that 90% of us will have high blood pressure at some point, unfortunately, in our lives. Hopefully not, but the percentage is pretty high. So there's a lot of sodium that's out there in many different places. So the goal is to limit to no more than 2,400 milligrams per day. And just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, that's like a teaspoon of salt is 2,000 milligrams. I know. So this is just a little bit more than that. So when we're cooking at home, it's not as much of an issue. It's more when we are going out. Again, if we're buying those packaged foods, you just want to kind of be careful. So usually what I like to recommend is like per meal, if you're aiming for like 2,400 milligrams for the whole day, if you aim for maybe 600, 700 milligrams per meal, and then the rest can be like for snacks, you should be okay. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your head is that, okay, 600, 700 milligrams of sodium. Oh, wow, I was going to eat these ramen noodles and these have 1,800, milligrams of sodium, which they do. So maybe it's not a good idea. So just hopefully it helps us to kind of rethink things. So the best thing that we can do to decrease sodium is just say, try to eat more fresh foods, try to use herbs and spices, lemon juice, there's different flavored vinegars we can use, and try to avoid adding salt to food when you're cooking or at the table, especially when you're at the table. Let me just start adding in a lot of the salt. That could be a big issue because a lot can come in. So again, just something to think about. And luckily, our taste buds can adjust. When you start to eat less sodium, you become sensitive so that if you eat something that is really salty, it just tastes really salty. So luckily our taste buds do adjust. Now there's different ways of eating, and I hesitate to say the word diet because diet technically means a way of eating. But our culture, right, the Western culture really, when people think of diets, they think of, oh, I'm gonna be restricting food. I'm just gonna be eating boring food. And it's a lot of negativity. So I hesitate to call it like that. I want to call it a lifestyle. So what we see in the research is that the Mediterranean and DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. These diets are very helpful for overall good health and well-being. And basically what these diets are, it doesn't mean you eat Mediterranean food. It doesn't mean you have to go out and have falafel and pita bread. What it basically means is the style of how they're eating. And the style of how they're eating is there's lots of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, which are beans and lentils. So therefore, there's a lot of fiber. There's also going to be a lot of vitamins and minerals that are coming from whole, unrefined foods. So foods that are not so ultra processed. Not a lot of animal products, right? And also low saturated fats. So saturated fats are fats that are solid at room temperature, and they usually do come from animal products, and they usually do come from coconut oil and palm kernel oil or palm oil. And yes, this does include ghee. It does include beef tallow, butter. I'm not saying don't eat those things, but I'm just saying that we this consistently keeps coming up in the research. I keep consistently even seeing it in my patients, is that when people eat lots and lots of saturated fats, it can affect heart health. So just something to kind of think about because currently our dietary guidelines have changed, unfortunately, into interesting guidelines. And we're seeing this emphasis, eat more fat, eat more protein. Be careful of the type that we're eating. And this kind of goes back to, for those of us who are Muslim, like to our prophetic diet. Our prophetic diet is very similar to this. There was a lot of fresh foods. Meat was not a staple. It was more like a luxury. So just kind of thinking of that, just overall, how can I pick more quality food? So let's take a look at kind of like what our plates can look like. So it's from the American Heart Association. So if ideally speaking, I know it might be a little bit difficult. It's hard with some of our foods. I understand. But just do our best that half of our plate, and by the way, the plate size is a 9-inch plate. A lot of plates that we buy nowadays are 10.5 inches. So just kind of think about that. This is more like the inner layer of the plate, or just using a smaller plate. And I know in the past for a wellness challenge, if you've been participating in years past, there's actually a plate that participants got a while ago. So you can still order that, I believe, on Amazon. So that's a cool way to kind of, give us some sort of guidance. So half of the plate, fruits, not, excuse me, more vegetables. But if you're like, oh, it's really hard for me to eat lots of vegetables, then you can add some fruit there. But don't make half your plate fruit though, but more vegetables. So whatever vegetables you like, whatever vegetables you're able to tolerate, just that's what we want to be focusing on. Did I get my vegetables in? Can I add vegetables to this meal? Oh, I was gonna eat egg in the morning. Let me throw some vegetables in there. So just however you could get vegetables in is very, very important. And that's also a good source of fiber, which helps us to keep regular. And it's a really good way for us to also feel full. 1/4 of our plate should be, it says whole grain, but this is actually also where we would put starchy vegetables. So starchy vegetables in this 1/4 of our plate would be peas, corn, potatoes. So PCP. It's not just your primary care provider. So your peas, corn, potatoes would also go in 1/4 of our plate because the consistency is a little bit different. They have a little bit more starch. For those that have diabetes, those can affect your blood sugars a little bit more than the other vegetables. They're not bad, don't worry, but we just want to eat a little bit less of them. So maybe you have, your part of your plate could be a sweet potato, part of your plate could be brown rice, it could be quinoa, it could be barley. Maybe you made some bread yourself and you're having that. So that would be 1/4 of our plate. And the other fourth is the protein. So yes, protein is important because it is the building block of our body. But we want to make sure that we don't go overboard. So let's suppose, you're picking your protein. So the palm of a woman's hand, this is about 3 ounces of protein. If you're having like meat protein. So this would be about 21 grams of protein. So if you aim for about that amount, about 20 grams of protein, give or take, for each meal, you will reach the recommended amount, right? Give or take. Um, so again, this much if you're doing meat, if you're doing beans, it'd be like a cup of beans, you're doing lentils, about a cup of that can add up there. So we want to pick more plant-based proteins ideally than like, oh, I'm going to eat a big piece of steak, right? That's nice, but not all the time. All right, so here's just some examples we can see because people ask me, well, really, how are we going to eat our food like that? We don't, we might not eat like, um, uh, like the plate on the left, but even our own foods, our ethnic foods. What are vegetables that are part of your ethnic, food group that you like? Eat those, right? Rice is okay, but maybe can you do brown rice? Can you maybe try some other type of grains, right? Whatever protein, however you make it, that's fine. So it doesn't have to be, very bland, boring food. Whatever food is part of your culture and your tradition, honor it, use it, eat it. So here's like more like a plant-based plate, right? So you see here, there's like some garbanzos here, there's some rice here, we got some vegetables. Potatoes again go on actually the potatoes should be over here. I think those are potatoes. Let's pretend those are cauliflower. And then you want to also make sure that you are making sure you're hydrated as well. So some a meal 101 basics. So try to space your meals every 4 to 5 hours apart. Especially if you have diabetes, you want to make sure you are eating regularly for blood sugar control. And what we're seeing in the research, and if you think about this, we see this even in our different traditions, is that the larger meal actually should be the meals earlier on in the day. So you have like your breakfast, you have like your lunch. Those are some of the bigger meals. Dinner is going to be a little more smaller, right? And then maybe you kind of cut your dinner 2 to 3 hours before your bedtime. So if you're sleeping at 10, maybe 7 o'clock is your cutoff point. So you're allowing your body to digest, right? And a lot of times at nighttime snacking, sometimes has us eat foods that maybe are not such healthy choices, right? Maybe we're used to munching on chips or cookies at night after we just ate dinner. That can be a little bit problematic. And make sure our food is balanced. So if you think of that plate method, double check, do I have some sort of a protein? Do I have some sort of a carbohydrate? Like maybe I have my fruit, my vegetable, my grain. So make sure there's always a balance. And I do want to kind of share some ideas. I know Ramadan is coming very fast. It'll be here before we know it. So here's some ideas for like suhoor time for that early morning meal, right? Is you want to make sure you have a balance. And this can also be just any breakfast, anytime. It doesn't have to be just during Ramadan. But we want to have a fiber-rich carbohydrate. So I gave an example. Maybe you have some fresh fruit. Maybe you have some old-fashioned oats, not the instant oats. That's very processed. Old-fashioned oats, steel-cut oats. Maybe you have some barley. Maybe you're making that sunnah food called talbina. Maybe you're having whole grain or whole wheat bread. Maybe you're making your own bread. Corn tortilla. Maybe you have some starchy vegetables. Maybe you're eating a little bit of potatoes from the night before. Beans also can be protein too. So you want to have some sort of carbohydrate. This is going to give us energy for the day. You want to definitely combine it with some sort of protein. So as I mentioned, about 15, 20 grams of protein. So maybe you have some eggs, maybe you have your cottage cheese. There's a lot of protein in there. Greek yogurt has a lot of protein. Maybe you have some meats, some low-fat cheese, tofu. Maybe some of you are having protein shakes. Protein shakes, just be careful, my friends. They are very, very processed. So pick ones that don't have so many ingredients, and don't rely on them as our main source of a meal. That's kind of like backup. Oh, I'm in a rush. Let me just have my protein shake. Otherwise, I'm not going to eat anything. So it's kind of like backup. But we ideally always want to have the food itself. And then some healthy fats, right? Maybe some avocado, some nuts and seeds. So here's some examples, right? Maybe you have whole wheat toast or some peanut butter there, some banana, and the seeds. And yes, so I see a question that a lot of our Olivers need to gain weight. So then just again, what you would be doing is you would be having more of the healthy fats. So you're cooking, you add a little bit extra olive oil in, right? Maybe you do eat a whole avocado, right? Maybe you or snack on nuts and seeds. And then, worse, like I said, getting maybe you are having that protein shake as a snack. So there's different things that we can do to and try our best to eat a little bit more of what you normally eat. Um, but usually it's the healthy fats that are helpful. So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, there's a lot to talk about. Maybe we can come back another time, do a part two. Gut health is very important. I'll come back to that another time. Inflammation, I know a lot of people are dealing with inflammation, which can cause us pain. So some anti-inflammatory things that we can do is cut down the red meats. Red meat can have a lot of inflammatory compounds because it is high, and it's also high in saturated fat. So beef and lamb, you want to maybe, reduce down. Maybe you have it once a week, let's say. If you have heart issues, then talk to your practitioner. You might even need to reduce it even less. If you're having lots of processed foods and lots of sugars, you're not getting any vegetables in or fruits, you're not getting activity in, that can all increase inflammation. So things that can help us decrease inflammation is fasting actually helps, which is nice. Fruit and vegetables, right? The more color, the better. Omega-3s, these are anti-inflammatory fats that we see in things like walnuts and flaxseed, fatty fish like salmon, tuna. Load up on the herbs and spices. We're very lucky that for many of us, turmeric is a part of our culture, right? And our foods. So adding that in, green tea can also be very high in antioxidants, which can help us. And then making sure we're getting physical activity and doing that meditation or relaxation. Okay, so I'm just, again, in interest of time, I want to end. I have two more slides. So I know there is in the wellness challenge, it's asking you what are 3 foods that you're going to add to your diet. So here are some ideas. And these are good foods to kind of aim for regularly. Again, the health benefits across the board are pretty solid in terms of what we see in the research, and that could be helpful. So a fistful of dark green veggies daily. So that would be things like spinach, kale. Arugula is really good for heart health, so you want to maybe have some arugula. So any of those dark green leafy veggies, you want to aim for those. And I would also even extend it to maybe you have like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, these type of veggies as well. And again, I know some of these veggies may not be part of our culture, right? But maybe trying them out and adding them in just to get variety. 1 cup cooked ancient grains daily. So ancient grains are grains that have not been changed that much. The wheat of today is very different than the wheat from our grandparents' generation. Again, especially here, just because of the way it's grown, the pesticides, it's very different. So I don't consider wheat an ancient grain. I'm not saying you don't eat it, but just there's other things that could be better options. So maybe you're having quinoa, amaranth, barley, bulgur, millet. Again, these are different, very ancient grains that our ancestors used to use. So let's bring them back. Oatmeal can also be considered an ancient grain. We want to have 1/2 cup of cooked legumes, which are beans or lentils, either daily or at least 3 times a week to start off. Berries, 1/2 cup daily. This is really good for immunity and for blood pressure. So blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, those are nice to have. Flaxseed, like a tablespoon. Um, You can grind it up and you can add that, sprinkle that on your oatmeal. We see some really good benefits, for cholesterol. They're looking at it for cancer. Turmeric, 1.5 teaspoons daily. A handful of nuts. So almonds, walnuts, right? These are nice to have. Ideally raw if you can get them. Um, would be preferable over the roasted, but something better than nothing. And then maybe having some green tea, again, if you can tolerate it. So these are some foods. Maybe we can do a checklist. Just check off, did I get these? Oh, I didn't eat my green veggies. Let me eat it, for dinner. And then lastly, yeah, matcha would be great. But matcha, just be careful of all the cream and like sugar and stuff that's added. I know that's very trending. If you just get the pure matcha and just maybe drink that like like a medicine, that actually 1 cup of matcha, it's like a green tea. Basically, it's like a powder. It's equivalent to like 10 cups of regular green tea. So here are some strategies for good health, just overall. So try to just move more. Instead of just sitting, maybe every hour you get up and you do some stretching, right? Get some movement in, right? Maybe put a little alarm, like, okay, every 40 minutes, every 45 minutes, I'm gonna get up and I'm just gonna walk around. There's actually in the research, they did a research study where if people got up every 45 minutes and did 10 squats, like they were sitting in a chair, but then they stand back up, that actually helped lower their blood sugars more than just doing a chunk of exercise at the end of the day. So just even regularly getting up and just moving, right? So try to that. Manage stress. That includes social connection. Um, Attend olive programs. Get enough quality sleep. Gut health is very important. That I think needs to be a separate session. Eat less processed foods. Eat more wholesome foods, right? Preferably more plant-based food. So less ingredients, the better. Watch your portion sizes for those that need to gain weight. Increase your portion sizes a little bit. Um, you can also, plan your meals. That's helpful in kind of figuring out what we're going to eat. And keep track again of what you're eating and drinking if that is easy for you. And then don't drink all your calories, especially if you're trying to lose weight or just manage your weight. If you're trying to gain weight, then maybe put in those liquid calories for snacks. Um, but we don't want to rely on drinks for those calories. Someone mentioned about coffee. Yes, there are some really good benefits of coffee for liver health, interestingly enough. But watch what you're putting in the coffee. If there's a lot of creamer and a lot of sugar going into there, then maybe not a good idea. If you're having heartburn, we don't usually recommend coffee, like for many people that can instigate that acid. And also, if you have irritable bowel syndrome, I do tend to see, or digestive issues. I know for many folks, the the coffee can actually aggravate some of those symptoms. For moringa, um, yeah, that could be okay. I haven't seen any like, big research studies about that, but that should be okay. I'll have to look into it a little bit more to see if there's any drug interactions, but it should be okay. What's a healthy option for creamers? Um, you want to just regularly, just like whatever milk that you like, right? You can do cow's milk. You use almond milk. I put soy milk in mine. You want to use a little bit of evaporated milk. So whatever you're putting, just a small amount, rather than those overly processed, creamers that we see in the market. So just more again of the non very minimally processed milks. You can do that. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, we're close to 12. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
we're
know. I
at
was like,
12.
there's so much
Let's,
to talk about, everyone, but very little
yes, thank
time.
you, Ruhi. Let's take a few questions. Let's
Sure.
keep the answers short and the question short as well. So, I see something about is ghee better than butter? Which oil for cooking?
Okay, so for cooking, I would honestly use olive oil or avocado oil. So olive oil can't handle high temperatures. So if you're doing like a very like you're not cooking at very high temperature, maybe like a marinade, maybe you're dipping in that, that's fine. Avocado oil is going to be better. The key, just be careful with that. It is very high in saturated fat. It should not be our main cooking oil or a cooking source, but you're making bread, you want to put a little ghee instead, that's okay. But just keep in mind that these things we want to watch how much we're having because if we were living in a society where we're not eating that much processed foods, we're eating lots of vegetables, we're lots of movement, we don't have that much stress, and we're doing stuff like that, then that's fine. But unfortunately, in our community or in our society, we do need to watch how much that we're having. So you can use it, but butter would be okay too. But just try to use less and use it more like as a treat, I guess you can say. Yeah.
And
Um,
and
mhm.
coconut oil is in that same
Yeah,
category.
coconut oil is the same thing. Like I said,
Category.
I know, we see this a lot. Oh, use coconut oil and beef tallow because they don't have high, like they can handle high temperatures to cook in. But just keep in mind, we don't want to be cooking very long at high temperatures, actually. That
Mm.
can really, affect the quality of the food. So just something to keep in
Question
mind.
about mustard oil.
Mustard oil's okay, yeah, but again, I haven't seen, that much the research
Mhm.
about mustard oil. I think that would be like a once in a while type of oil. Like if you're using like sesame oil, it wouldn't
Right,
not be the main oil that you'd be cooking with.
right. All right, Olivers, we'll take one or two questions if you can quickly ask.
Oh, thank you.
No question. Thank you, everyone, again for attending. We are trying to get Roohe to come out in person and maybe do a session on inflammation and gut health. So watch out for that. But in the meanwhile, come to the Inland Empire. She's there once a month. So you'll get to see her there as well. All right, everyone, thank you for your time. It's 12:05. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. I'll
Thank you
see
so
you.
much.
I'll see you later this week and on Sunday, inshallah, hopefully. Okay?
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Zoya. Thank you, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Thank you so
salam.
much.
Olive Community Services is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Southern California that provides culturally appropriate services to seniors, their family, and the community. Through its physical and virtual interactive programs, Olive engages participants in a variety of ways that promotes health and well-being. To learn more about Olive Community Services, to get involved, or to make a donation, please visit www.olivecs.org or email info@olivecs.org. Be a change maker, and together, let's live, learn, and thrive.